Hi there, this is Mike Gonzalez with the Green Vigilante Media. Today we're here with Erik Rydberg. He is the Green Party spokesman, the male spokesman for the Green Party of California, and he's running for McKinleyville Community Service District. Um, McKinleyville Community Services District. Hi, Erik, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Um, so go ahead and tell us exactly what the community services district entails for people who don't know.
Community services districts are basically like parks and recreation, lighting, sewage, water, those kind of things.
Gotcha.
So McKinleyville's community services district is in a really exciting position. It's an unincorporated area of Humboldt County. It's the largest unincorporated area of Humboldt County. They're pushing near 16,000 people here. So it's it's the largest area in Humboldt County that doesn't already have a city council and incorporation as a city. So the McKinleyville Community Services District operates all the water, the sewage, the lighting, the recreation, and there's an advisory board to the county supervisors board. That's called the McKinleyville Municipal Advisory Committee. So the board of supervisors are the ones that, for the county, are the ones that make the majority of the decisions for things that go on in McKinleyville. So that's how McKinleyville is set up as far as governance.
Gotcha. Excellent. And then you've been pretty active you've done a lot of activism there. You've been, I know you've been trying to get the, what is it, Measure M, trying to get the statue removed.
Yeah, that's in the town of Arcata. It's just south of here.
Uh-huh.
And that is in regards to the McKinley, President William McKinley statue.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, I have been active in that. My great grandfather, Joseph Santos, was Chamorro, which is from the island of Guam. His family put him on a Filipino fishing vessel to come to America because of McKinley's colonization of Guam. He grew up, he became an adult and a fisherman here on the North Coast in Jenner, California, where he met my great-great-grandmother. And the history is that President William McKinley, sent a naval commander to colonize and take Guam as an American territory. One of the first things they did was legalize their religion, the Chamorro and the people of Guam. So if there was any dissenters to the colonization that was taking place, they could easily be arrested on the claim that they were practicing their religion. And that's the reason his family sent him here, is because of some of the pretty ruthless tactics that were taking place in the colonization of Guam. So the statue is a symbol. It stands right in the center of the Arcata Plaza of William McKinley. He has a treaty in his hand, and he has his hand outstretched to the west. And now Time Magazine has put William McKinley down as one of the top 10 most forgettable presidents in history. So I'm sure that your listeners may not know his history. So I'll tell you that he passed a joint resolution. He attempted to annex Hawaii from the Hawaiian Queen, was unsuccessful in doing so. So they passed a joint resolution to be able to take Hawaii away from the Queen for the sugar barons that wanted those trade routes. So the treaty in his hand is that treaty of annexation that failed. And his outstretched hand to the west is a symbol of American imperialism seeking to take Hawaii away from the Hawaiian people. So we're on. I'd like to say this now. We're on Wiyot land here in Humboldt County, particularly Eureka, Arcata, McKinleyville. This northern part of Humboldt is Wiyot territory. So I just want to say, we thank you, Wiyot Nohopo, with the Wiyot people. I appreciate so much to be able to be on your land. I am Kashaya Pomo Indian from Sonoma County, but even me, somebody whose family's been here in California for 10,000 years, I am a guest on this land of the Wiyot people. So I say thank you to the Wiyot people for being able to be here. The McKinley statue, it's been a long debate. It's been a long issue. They've been trying to take down that statue 13 years ago. There used to be a green majority on the city council here in Arcata. And Dave Meserve proposed that they remove that statue 13 years ago. It was seconded by another Green Party councilor, Paul Patino, and it failed. At that time, there was only 2 Greens on the council, and the other 3 voted no. So they were unable to remove the statue 13 years ago. This time around, the Wiyot Tribal Council has asked for it to be removed by a unanimous vote by the Wiyot Tribal Council. Paul Patino got re-elected in 2016 to serve on the Arcata City Council, and so when the Wiyot let their wishes be known, Paul Patino brought the proposal again to remove the statue. This time it passed 4-1. 4 councilors voted to remove the statue, and the 1 councilor that voted no took it upon himself to go and collect petitions to keep the statue there. Not only keep the statue there, but keep it there permanently, never be able to modify it or move it in any way, not even put up a plaque. Wouldn't be allowed to put up a plaque next to it saying what McKinley did to indigenous people, not only in the islands, but here on Turtle Island, what's now called the United States of America. He passed Proclamation 460, which abolished the land rights of the Kiowa, Comanche, Wichita, and Apache. He also signed on to the Curtis Act, which abolished the tribal governments, land rights, and courts of the Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole. Even the people that want to keep the statue talk about his fighting in the Union during the Civil War, and they call him an abolitionist. But as president, the colored people of Massachusetts, who went on to form the NAACP, wrote him letters asking him to intervene on the KKK lynching African Americans post-Civil War, to which they got no response or no action. So it was much more about, for McKinley, the industrial corporations and capitalism of the North versus the actual liberation of African American people, which we know the Civil Rights Act wasn't until the 60s. So McKinley was not a champion of African American rights. He was on the side of industrialization and corporations. He even got into office on questionable means. We know from 2016 that elections can be tampered with. We know for a fact that the Democratic Party violated their own bylaws and cheated, roughly nearly 20 million Bernie supporters to put Hillary Clinton in the office. So we know that election fraud happens. There were similar questions as to how McKinley even got into office in the first place. So his legacy as an imperialist, as a colonizer of indigenous peoples, is a notoriously bad one. He's right up there with Andrew Jackson and the Trail of Tears, if not worse, because of the millions and millions and millions of acres that he took away from indigenous people on this continent. So that's why we're fighting for it. That 1 counselor that voted no against the McKinley statue went collected petitions and now forced it to a vote of the populace, which is 80% a white population. Native Americans are about 2% of the population. African Americans about the same. Members of the NAACP have very much voiced their disapproval of people trying to claim that McKinley was an abolitionist in order to keep a statue that is so harmful for indigenous people there, when he knowingly ignored lynchings, mass lynchings. We know that the KKK lynched roughly at least 4,000 people that we know about. So this is a mass problem, and McKinley did not have any sympathy for African American people. So I'm on the committee to help remove the statue. It's actually a no vote. The measure M is to keep the statue permanently, so we're getting people to say no, to remove the symbol of so much destruction to indigenous people. And because of who put the statue there in the first place, the man who paid $15,000 back in the late 1800s, early 1900s to put it there, that's about $40,000 in today's money. He owned a 7-year-old indigenous girl as a slave, and he's the one who paid to put the statue up there. So that's why we're fighting for them. That has to do with Arcata more than it does McKinleyville, but McKinleyville, as you can tell by the name, has some similar issues.
So that's a no vote on Measure M in Arcata. Excellent. So you mentioned this as you were telling the story, Turtle Island. You want to talk about the Green Party of Turtle Island. Where is that? How do I get there? And how would I join that Green Party?
You've been there. You've been there this whole time. Yep. We've all been here for thousands of years. So the America is the new name that came about through the ruthless slaughter and genocide of millions of Native Americans. So what you're alluding to is the Indigenous Caucus that's being built within the Green Party. And we very much want to see historical justice brought to our textbooks, brought to the names. One of the arguments that's being put up for the keeping of the McKinley statue is that settlers don't want their history to be erased about McKinley. And so if we're going to have that conversation about the erasure of history, we have to take a look at the fact that every name of every town, of every watershed, of every mountain on this continent, the indigenous history has been erased, right? History that has been around for thousands of years before Jesus Christ ever lived, right? Native history has been erased. So putting up a statue 100 years ago of a man who was so brutal to indigenous people is not the genuine history of this continent. The real history is the suffering, the slavery, the mass murders, the massacres, the taking the separation of families, of children from their parents during the colonization of California between 1850 and 1860. That's the real history. So that's history that has been erased, and that is the history that must be returned. So if you want to talk about erasing history, talk about from coast to coast on Turtle Island, how every tribe has suffered at the hands of settlers and the erasure of their history. So that's what we're doing, is returning history. Genuine history that is not coded and whitewashed with the exclusion of the brutality and savagery that was used to reduce indigenous populations by 60, 70, 80% in some places. There's tribes that are extinct, like the Yahi, because of state-funded genocide by the state of California. They were paid roughly $1.5 million between 1850 and 1860 to collect scalps, heads, to sell our children. And nobody's heard of this. Nobody has any idea that this happened because they erased our history, right? So the Green Party of Turtle Island, the Indigenous Caucus, is going to very much try and bring forth the real history of how the United States of America came into existence. And we're going to bring justice and shed light on the resilience and the incredible struggle and survival of Indigenous people on this continent. So that's what the Indigenous Caucus is doing. I think that's what you were asking about.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. So you were at Standing Rock, and one of the key figures there was Chase Iron Eyes.
Yeah.
And Chase Iron Eyes has now joined the Green Party. Is he playing a key role in the Green Party of Turtle Island then?
He's been at our meetings. He's been involved in the discussions of how we're going to move forward. The caucus is not officially accredited yet. It takes 100 members, and we're almost there. We have about 80. We're like in the last 20 people that we need to get officially accredited. So it's been a couple years pulling people together. Well, it's been since 2017 that it's been over the last couple years that we've been pulling the organizers who very much want to see this happen together. So Chase has had involvement, and we're very honored to have him. And we're really happy that his case, the Class C felonies that they charged nearly 700 people with at Standing Rock, was dropped against him. It's completely absurd that this day in 2016, 2017, 2018, the federal government can just come in on your treaty land from 1851, destroy, threaten your water resource, and then threaten you with Class C felonies for trying to save your water resource. It's a shame, and America should be embarrassed, and shame on the United States of America for what they did at Standing Rock. That's real. Yeah.
So there's been a little bit of buzz and a little bit of talk about Chase Iron Eyes maybe running for president or being the Green Party candidate for president. Now at Standing Rock, Jill Stein went to Standing Rock, and she got, actually there was a case against her as well. It was just for I think vandalism or something like that. But in any case, do you think that the Green New Deal, Jill Stein's Green New Deal, is very much in line with what the Green Party of Turtle Island would be for, and do they line up pretty well?
Absolutely. There's a movement going on called greening the res. Multiple reservations have been looking at sustainability. If you look at the history of reservations and where they are, there's not a lot of resources. There certainly is not hardly any infrastructure whatsoever. It is pathetic that we have like third world living conditions in this country for the First Nations of this continent, the people living in the worst poverty, the people with the worst statistics on high school graduation, college education, child mortality, water resources, are the First Nations of this continent, right? So the Green New Deal, under, especially with the existence of an Indigenous caucus, would be very much focused on using these resources that we have as the richest country on the face of the planet to change the situation, living conditions of 2% of the population. If we can't improve the lives of 2% of the population, the first population of this continent that has been utterly decimated through ruthless murders over 500 years, how can we pretend like we can really improve the lives of anyone in this country, right? So if the Green Party of the United States and their Indigenous caucus has the say of how that Green New Deal comes about, as we slowly pull our way up into power in this political system, there will be definitely a focus on improving the quality of life and improving the infrastructure of reservations from coast to coast. So yes, the Green New Deal is a necessity for all human, animal, and environmental life on this continent. If we do not do it, we are witnessing the complete and utter collapse of our ecosystem. We're watching in Florida as the marine life is being wiped out, right? We're watching in California as hundreds of thousands, millions of acres are being burnt. People are dying because of the infrastructure being based on profit. When we talk about colonialism, we talk about the mechanisms that create colonialism. Those mechanisms are capitalism, the need for America, what they usually coin as American interest. That's the reason they needed to take our water resources, needed to take our forests, needed to take our lands from us, so that they can commodify these natural resources and make a very small group of people very, very rich. We talk about white supremacy, the one-drop rules, and blood quantums for Native Americans. Even after the Emancipation Proclamation, there were laws in place that would not allow a Native American to ever testify here in California against a white person ever. And if they were found guilty, they had to be put up for indentured servitude within 24 hours. So just the highest bidder white person could say, oh, a Native American did this. They'd rush him into court, find him guilty, and within 24 hours, he would have to basically be enslaved again through indentured servitude. And that was California law. Just as the war of extermination that the first governor of California helped facilitate, he literally quoted it and called it the war of extermination against the Indian race that would continue until we cease to exist. That was incredibly successful. And it's a shocking and, it's generationally traumatic to know what, my ancestors went through, to see what my relatives in existence right now are going through at Standing Rock, that are going through at the Jordan Cove LNG pipeline with the Klamath tribe and Modoc and Hoopa, Yurok, Karuk. What's going on in Canada with Kinder Morgan. So colonization has not ever stopped or even really slowed its brakes. We're in multiple countries fighting at least on 5 to 7 fronts, mostly for their resources, for other people's resources. So we need to put a complete halt to colonialism, to capitalism, to white supremacy, to patriarchy, the fact that women are being paid less than men, and to manifest destiny, this extreme, this Christian view that anybody who's not Christian isn't civilized or somehow a threat, right? Because that was also a basis on, the reason they called some tribes civilized and some others is because of adopting colonial beliefs like Christianity or capitalism or these things. They use these mechanisms. They all reinforce each other in order to colonize this country and to colonize many other countries. We have 800 military bases all across the globe. All other countries combined have 30, right? So we are the largest imperial force in existence, and we are not doing it to spread democracy. We are not doing it to make anyone's lives better. We're doing it for capitalism and control over resources. And it needs to stop as soon as possible, because the world, the planet, will not survive this continued track of consumption and pollution that is killing massive quantities of species. We're on the verge of mass die-offs and extinction. So it's capitalism that needs to go extinct. Not all of our.
I like what you said, that we have to stop colonialism first, because, like you said, even with well, you alluded to the wars, but also, we impose sanctions. That's colonialism on a lot of countries. And with our allies, we put bases in their countries. We're not leaving those bases. You know what I mean? Some of our allies, I believe, don't realize that they're being colonized just as well, when we make our military presence there, because it's permanent. We're not going to leave. Um, so obviously, capitalism is draining resources from the world, and you are very much, and the Green Party is for eco-socialism. Can you tell us about eco-socialism? What is it? And I guess you're involved in some groups, the Young Eco-Socialists.
Yeah. So in 2016, the Green Party of the United States adopted a platform amendment stating that the Green Party opposes capitalism. It also opposes state socialism, authoritarian socialism, top-down socialism, in favor of a decentralized system that could be called ecological socialism. It could be called mutualism, the cooperative commonwealth, whatever you want to call it. What it's saying is that capitalism is not a sustainable model for existence of humanity and the environment. We have a finite amount of resources. There is not infinite resources, and in order for capitalism to be indefinite, there has to be infinite resources, and there just isn't. So the eco-socialist platform is really hitting the nail on the head. It's saying that, the reason we're in this mess, A, is because of capitalism, right? But also B, the reinforcement of capitalism by state authoritarian power, right? In this country, because of things like corporate personhood, you're in Santa Clara County, right?
Right.
Because of the 1886 ruling by the Supreme Court on Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad, they ruled that corporations are people that have human constitutional rights. And for that reason, they've been able to overturn about 200 pieces of legislation, from everything from banning GMOs to here in Humboldt County, we banned fracking. They were able to come in and sue on their corporate human rights, their First Amendment rights, the rights to pursuit of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. They were able to overturn the ban on fracking because their profits are their life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. As crazy as that sounds, a fictitious entity has our very human rights. So, eco-socialism points the finger and says, hey, what happened was the capitalists, right? The colonizers with the big money that came as European settlers and began seizing ownership of our waterways, of our lands, of our forests, of our animals. They created a government in which they systematically put in rule after rule and law after law to reinforce the power of the capitalist over the people, right? So in this country, what we have is the corporations own the government, right? They literally own every single senator and congressman that is in office right now, including Bernie Sanders, took corporate money to get there. Bernie Sanders wasn't always a corporate-free candidate. He took a large donation from Hillary PAC in 2016, directly from Hillary Clinton's super PAC, in order to get him into the office with a deal with the Democrats to make sure they wouldn't run anybody against him, right? So everybody that is in office right now, every single one of them is tied in some way to the economic elite in this country, right? Either through the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, which are both two capitalist, corporate-owned parties that both take massive amounts of money from the military-industrial complex, from the medicinal-industrial complex, from the pharmaceutical industry, from the prison-industrial complex. These two parties are bought and paid for, and all of the candidates that are in office are as well, to some degree. Now, Bernie Sanders maybe fights for healthcare for all, or education. But in the grand scheme of things, these are like little crumbs to the capitalist, right? They're making trillions of dollars off developing like the F-35 fighter jet, off of dropping bomb after bomb after bomb on the Middle East. They will give you healthcare and education, as long as you don't stir up a fuss about the Yemeni children that are being bombed to death and starved to death on behalf of our allies, Saudi Arabia and the Saudi-led coalition, which is by far the most dangerous thing in existence in the world, aside from us, right? We're part of that Saudi-led coalition. So we really have to get a handle on our democracy, because it's the only chink in the armor that really exists to be able to make changes to stop this global domination of monetary power that is owned by such a very small, very, very small group of people that own more than half of the world's everything. So it's a bad situation. I like, you're my friend. I like being able to talk and have a good time with people, but we as a people need to get really serious about this, right? We are going headlong into the collapse of our ecosystem. And guess what collapses when that happens? Humanity does, right? We need our habitat and our environment to continue to survive. So this is deadly serious, and we need to make a hard break with corporations, corporate parties, capitalist parties, both the Democrats and the Republicans, the Libertarians, American independents, anybody that has even a pinky toe in the waters of colonial capitalism. You need to remove it, and we need to begin to fight like our lives depend on it, because, in fact, they do.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Erik. So I want to get back a little bit to your activism. I saw an article where, as well as you fighting to remove the McKinley statue, you guys were also fighting for justice for Josiah. This is about the Humboldt Green Party, and you guys were also fighting against ICE or demonstrating against ICE. Can you tell us about some of the other activism you do there in Humboldt County?
Absolutely. The Green Party of Humboldt County has 9 elected officials in office right now. There's 67 Greens elected in California right now. 9 of them are here. We have 5 candidates running right now, including myself. Actually, 6, including myself. So we have been, not only did our council member bring the proposal to remove the McKinley statue, we were on the committee to help collect signatures to put Measure K on the ballot. Measure K is a Humboldt County sanctuary measure. We say K for keeping families together. Gives parents a right to say what happens over their child if they're deported. Right now, the children are just being put right into child welfare services, or worse, the military or the prison industrial complex. So there's nothing we could do to stop ICE because they're federal. But what our sanctuary measure says, and this was spearheaded and put together by a group called Centro de Pueblo, right? It says that we're not going to spend any of our county funds assisting ICE. We can't stop ICE, but we don't have to assist them. None of our law enforcement is ever going to talk to them, work with them. If you're on the clock, you will not be able to assist ICE, talk to ICE, tell ICE anything, or spend any of our money working with them. They're the federal government. That is their job. It's not our job to mandate their ridiculously flawed immigration policy. So, but most importantly, in my opinion, is that gives the parent a right, if they do get deported, to say, my child can stay with a family member. Maybe the best thing is that they go with them. Either way, it gives a parent a choice. And no child should go through the traumatic event of being separated from the parent in a way that just utterly shatters their entire existence, like being thrown into child welfare services or being placed into prison. So, so yes on Measure K for Humboldt County. It's incredibly important, especially for Mexican, South American people. These are people that are indigenous to this continent. Their blood has been here for just as long as mine has, right? On this continent. We're from here. For a Scottish descendant like Trump to say that people that are indigenous to this continent are not welcome here is a textbook example of colonial white supremacy, is exactly what that is. So the Green Party of Humboldt County has just been doing a lot of really great work. They've been involved with Measure K. They've been involved with the No on Measure M. They've been actively supporting Prop 10, the rent control prop that would abolish Costa-Hawkins and allow municipal governments to make their own decisions about rent control. We have a ridiculous housing crisis here in Humboldt County. We have a very large homeless population. There's not very many housing options. The cost of living here is very expensive. We need to pass Prop 10 and repeal Costa-Hawkins for the sake of so many people here in Humboldt County. So yeah, I've been real honored and lucky to get to work with everybody in the Green Party of Humboldt County. I'm very proud of all of them. There's an amazing amount of work being done.
Yeah, I think Humboldt County has made a large impact on the Green Party of California for sure. A lot of effective activists there. So let me ask you this. What do you hope to accomplish as McKinleyville Community Service in the Community Services District there? What are your personal issues that you think you can accomplish there, and why should voters look at you for it?
McKinleyville is in a very similar situation as much of as many cities the majority of America is in. The water and sewage infrastructure is pushing well beyond 50 years, which was the life expectancy. So that infrastructure is going to have to be replaced. The last time this happened was during the New Deal with Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and the time has come. Our infrastructure has reached its life expectancy. So unfortunately, it seems like the MCSD only really sees the best way to do this is by raising the water rates. So the cost of water is getting very expensive here. There's many other options and many other creative ways we could be using to raise money from the community to start setting aside the money that we're going to need to rebuild the infrastructure. So I hope to bring some of those ideas. A lot of those ideas you see in the Green New Deal, a lot of the ideas you see in like our agricultural platforms. One of the really exciting things for me as a Green is that there's the Arcata Airport out here has a lot of flat space and a lot of open space. And there's a $2.5 million grant available to MCSD to put a solar plant there. It's a matching funds grant. So if we can get the loans and the funding necessary to come up with the 2.5 million, then we'll have this matching funds grant for the other 2.5. We could build a $5 million solar plant at the Arcata Airport. And this would reduce our dependency on power from outside of the area, power that is largely environmentally destructive, and start pushing us towards the financial goal that we need to make to rebuild the water infrastructure. Once we get this plant built and paid for, then we'll be saving so much money that we could put towards rebuilding infrastructure. Also, there's there's a general plan for Humboldt County. There's McKinleyville's community plan that has been around for years. A lot of that stuff hasn't been accomplished. I'm hoping to push for that. There's things like a town center and the incorporation of McKinleyville as actually a city. problem right now is that the county board of supervisors are sort of making all the decisions for McKinleyville. It's such a large population for Humboldt County that they could have a city council versus this community advisory board and the MCSD. Frankly, the MCSD probably shouldn't have so much influence. There should be a city, and we should be self-governing and making a lot of the decisions that are being made for us on behalf or by the county board of supervisors. We could have our own city council. We can be making these decisions ourselves. So those are the things that I'm running on: as affordable water, renewable energy, the town center, incorporation as a city. We need to prepare the infrastructure. McKinleyville is a growing town, and the population is just going to keep getting more and more. So we need to get ahead of the curve, get this infrastructure built, both politically with a city and literally with our water infrastructure, to be able to support the future populations, and also to prepare for the massive climate change issues that we're going to have. We're right here on the coast. As ocean sea levels rise, that salt water is going to start to intrude on our freshwater reserves. There's going to be a massive shift in how we do things around here, and we need to start preparing for that. And I think that I'm the right person to start setting those wheels in motion to prepare for the changes that the future is going to bring us.
Excellent. I think with everything you said about capitalism, taking resources from our planet, and the need to change the climate back to its original or a better status to keep life going. I think bringing the new Green New Deal to your county, I think you're the right guy for the job, Erik. So I'm glad you're running. Is there anything else you want to cover?
Yeah. I just want to encourage people to break free of the two-party system. I really do. No matter whether we've gone blue or we've gone red, we've gotten the same exact thing. George W. Bush started 2 wars. Obama pushed us into 5 other conflicts afterwards. George Bush pushed oil on us super hard, and Obama sold fracking all over the world, right? We need to get away from corporate-controlled politics. We need to do it as soon as possible. We need to do it this November 6th. We need to vote Greens, peace and freedom, socialist candidates all across the country, candidates that don't take corporate money. We need a paradigm shift to get away from this extinction level path that we're on. So I just want to, don't listen to the media. Don't let them discourage you from stepping outside of what has been known. If you look at who the media is, they are the 1%. They are corporations, massive billion-dollar corporations. They're not going to tell you or encourage you to actually do the things that you need to do to protect yourself against them, right? So I would encourage people, look at parties like the Green Party, look at the Peace and Freedom Party, look at who has ballot access and can make changes, and vote for those candidates. Do not be afraid to vote. The things like the spoiler myth and all this propaganda that's been put forth by both corporate parties is to discourage you from actually taking the power into your own hands. So, the Green Party is the largest electoral movement in the world. There are 91 international Green parties all across the globe. We have a prime minister in Iceland with Katrín Jakobsdóttir. There's a president in Austria with Alexander Van der Bellen. Prime Minister of Canada just recently got arrested on the Kinder Morgan pipeline. We can take the power back, but we have to have the courage to do so, and we can't be influenced by the ridiculous amount of lies being pumped at us from only what, 5 corporations own all media, right? None of them are our friends. So we need to understand that this is going to take a mass mobilization of the working class, of the proletariat, of people that have been forced into poverty. We are the majority, and we're not going to get liberation from those that are oppressing us. So I just want to encourage anyone and everyone in this country and across the globe to look at corporate-free politics, look at anti-capitalist politics, and do what you can to actually engage, get involved in organizing on your local level. The slogan for the International Greens is, think globally, act locally. And I take that to heart. When I look at what's going on here in McKinleyville, I'm looking to Iceland. I'm looking to these other countries that have made so much more progress than we have. America is so behind the curve that it's shameful. We, as the richest country in the world, we as a country that has democracy, we have the power to make big changes, but we have to have the courage and the will to seize that power, take it into our own hands, and create the society that we really want. So that's what I wanted to say to end off, is just encourage people to be the change you want to see. Take the power in your own hands. Take responsibility for changing the world, because you can. Every single person has the power to make change. There's no one too small to be able to make the world a better place.
Excellent, Erik. And I want to just on a note to what you said about Republicans and Democrats. There's a lot of good progressive Democrat voters out there, but I want to just make this case is that the Democratic Party itself and its infrastructure is corporately funded. So even when we have some good progressive Democrats coming out in the Democratic Party, they're still taking corporate money in either directly or indirectly. And I think the real litmus test for candidates should be no corporate money. We can start there and hopefully become more progressive there. So yeah, thank you for representing us, Erik, both in California and McKinleyville. Do you have a website for people who would want to volunteer or donate or want to learn more about you?
Yes, my website is Erik, my name's spelled with a K, E-R-I-K, the number 4, MCSD, that's McKinleyville Community Services District. So it's Erik with a K, number 4, MCSD dot Jimdo free. I'm using a free website. It's JIMDOFREE.com. Please go to erik4mcsd.jimdofree.com. Volunteer, feel free to donate if you have the ability, and advocate for my candidacy for anybody from McKinleyville that's listening. We already have George Wheeler, a Green Party member who's on the McKinleyville Community Services District. And there's Mary Burke, who's endorsed by the Green Party. She's a former Green Party member, one of the many that joined the Democratic Party to support Bernie. So if I get elected, we're going to have a majority of progressives on the council. We can really, really do some things to make McKinleyville a better place and prepared for the coming climate change and so forth. So please help every corporate-free candidate that you can, and do be wary of the Democratic Party. They are not your friend. So many candidates, for decades, they've been trying to reform the Democratic Party for decades, and it has not worked. And it hasn't worked because there's really honestly legal roadblocks that are not overcomable. So that's why we need to build a third party or multiple third parties that work in coalition. We need to get outside of this establishment politics altogether. That way we are not hamstrung by a corporate capitalist party that's trying to prevent all the movement that we want to make. So join the Green Party of the United States, because it's power to the people, not the capitalist or the state. It's power to the people.